The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as the Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expansive Deep Open-Minded Conversation. I'm the one they call Shane, and today for you guys, keeping on with the spooky season, I have another awesome set of paranormal investigators coming on. They're going to share some of their own experiences, going to share some of the work that they're doing, and of course, dive into some of their theories as far as the paranormal goes. But before we get into that one today, just a couple quick things. One, I announced on the last episode, but anybody who hasn't gone and checked out Bizarre Tees, please follow on Instagram. Check it out. Let me know what you guys think. It is this new tea company that I'm in the process of working on. All creature-inspired teas. Have a lot of new ideas for new flavors that I want to work on in the future. But the first one I've worked on is 2 different variations of the Squatch blend. So if you haven't had a chance to check those out, go and check them out. They are a coffee alternative, so the main base of them is yerba mate, and they got a woodsy taste with, of course, a little accent of either apple or mint, depending on which flavor variation you pick. If you guys are coming to Snarly Yow's Cryptid Halloween 3, you guys can go and scoop them there. That's going to be the first event that I'm going to have these at, and that's going to be happening October 26th in Ranson, at the Ranson Civic Center in Ranson, West Virginia. So if anybody's able to make it out, it is free admission for anybody that comes out, and if you guys want more information for that, that is also available down in the show description. And on the other side, if anybody is interested in ordering some tea and they aren't going to that event, you guys can always shoot me a message through the Bizarre Tees Instagram, and I actually made a little order form set up on there if you click on the learn more option down at the bottom. But before we get into the show, just a quick message. This podcast has a strong focus on community engagement, so I encourage all listeners to share their own experiences and research on the show. That said, if you have an encounter or an experience that you guys would like to have featured on the show, you guys can either, one, type it out and email me at ommencounterreports@outlook.com, or you guys can call the hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551, and you guys can leave a voicemail and, of course, be featured on an upcoming episode of the new show that I'm working on called The Reality Report. But without your guys' help, that show will never happen, so hopefully I get enough of these encounter reports, no matter how big, no matter how small. I want to hear about them, and I want to be able to hopefully use them for the show. And on the other side, if anybody has some place that they would like investigated and they don't want to actually be featured on the show, or if they just want somebody to talk about their experiences with, but they also, again, just don't want them on the show, you guys can also do that too. Just let me know, and I, of course, will verify before anything gets put on the show. And on the other side, if anyone is interested in being a guest on the show, whether you're an author, researcher, experiencer, spiritualist, any of that kind of stuff, an open-minded individual, that's what I'm looking for on this show. You guys can email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, and every single thing that I mentioned is all available on the link tree, which is available down in the show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, Rachel, DeMicco, and Jenn Blackwell from Sinister Sisters Paranormal. How's it going today, guys?
Hey, how are ya?
How are you?
Not doing too bad, and actually trying to keep up a little bit with the spooky season. It's actually worked out pretty well. I've had actually a pretty nice chunk of paranormal investigators and people have been in the kind of paranormal realm coming on lately, so kind of lucked out. We didn't plan that, but you guys kind of fell for like the start of kind of when I'm putting some of the Halloween stuff together, so perfect timing.
Nice.
Awesome.
And
love that.
considering what you guys get into, I mean, I definitely feel you guys probably got some spooky Halloween type stories to get into at some point here. So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
we definitely do.
Yeah.
but I guess a good spot to start for anybody that may not be familiar with both you guys, your work, what exactly you guys do. Why don't you let them know a little bit about your background and a little bit about what you guys do?
You want me to go first, Jen?
Yeah, go for it.
So, obviously, my name is Rachel. I'm in the Nashville, Tennessee area, and I'm originally from California in the San Francisco Bay Area. Moved out to Tennessee back in 2019. When I got out here, I ended up being on a group, different team altogether. That I was able to find, and because I had years and years of like wanting to be part of the paranormal, join a team, like investigate, do those kinds of things. And when I had an opportunity, I just jumped on it. And so I was with them for a couple of years, and I think it was about June-ish or so when Jen and I worked together in our Monday through Friday day jobs. And so, we talked a lot about how, like the investigations, and I brought Jen, was able to come on a few with us, so on the other team, and it just became the right time and place to kind of move out on our own. So we started our own team of paranormal investigating. And our whole kind of philosophy around it was that we wanted to really kind of take in a bunch of like novice ghost hunters who really don't know where to start, who've had like this interest in the paranormal for a long time, but like us, but didn't know, okay, what groups do I join? How do I go about getting into these places? Like,
Show them the ropes a little bit.
Exactly. That's exactly what we wanted to do. And then kind of give them a little bit of education, let them use the tools that we use, investigate how we investigate, and, hopefully walk away with experiences of their own. So
it's a cool way of doing it, though, because a lot of people, you get into an investigating group and you feel like you might be in a little bit over your head if you're more of like a newcomer for it. So I think it's pretty cool that you guys kind of started off where you had that intention of people kind of coming in as beginners, showing them the ropes, letting them know kind of what everything's all about and everything. Because again, then you don't have that stipulation of you come on expecting that you're already going to be, somebody that already knows everything you got to do for this team. People can kind of learn their place a little bit as far as like what they enjoy doing as far as like a paranormal investigating team. And then the other good part for you guys is that you don't have that conflict where people come in and say, this is the way I've been used to doing it forever. You can kind of get people adapted into how you guys do stuff. And if they stick around, they stick around. If they don't, then, you kind of give them the stepping stone to be able to get into what they're trying to get into.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that it kind of spawned off of like, I think Jen's sort of feelings about when she was joining us for investigations, and, how, everything came across as kind of a newbie into it. And so that really got our wheels turning of like how we could do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
So at least for you, Rachel, I'm assuming you kind of been in this field for a while, and then Jen, you came in a little bit later as far as this stuff goes?
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, I've gone about
I think she
almost like still newer, but like 3 years experience.
Yeah.
Did I freeze?
Yeah, you froze for a second, but I came back and I heard the 3 years part.
Okay, good.
But
so then Jen can share her experiences.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm definitely still very much so a newbie. I've been doing this for about a year now, and I'm Jen. I was born at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, but I grew up a military brat, so really not from one area in particular. Moved around my entire life, every 2 years, and settled down with my husband here in Springfield, Tennessee, which is about 30 minutes away from Nashville, once he retired from the military. And I've always been interested in paranormal. Always been something that's, been, a passion of mine to learn and experience, and, anything spooky, was all about it. And then I met Rachel at work, and when I found out she was part of a group, a paranormal investigation group, I thought that was just like the coolest thing ever. I had no idea that was even a thing. I thought that, like, Ghost Hunter, Zach Baggins, like, was like it, and there was no other option. Like, I didn't even know that going on investigations, like, was a real thing that people could do unless you had like your own TV show. So when I had the opportunity to join Rachel, I jumped on it, and I absolutely was hooked after my first investigation. And it just kind of, like Rachel said, we've had many lunchtime conversations about, the need in the community, in the paranormal community, for people who are interested but don't know where to begin, because I was that person, and just trying to make it more easily accessible to people, that this is something that is a legit thing. If you're passionate about it and you want to do it, you can, and just making it easily accessible for them. So
at least like your guys' passion for the paranormal, obviously, like, you ended up, I'm assuming, having some experiences once you started investigating, but it seems like it usually starts for a lot of people because they've had their own experiences in life that have happened, or, maybe it's just something that they got caught up on or interested in, as far as like a show or a book or something. But at least for both of you guys, like, where did your like interest start with the paranormal? Was it from some type of event, something with family, or just an interest in the topic as a whole?
Go for it, Jen.
With me, when I was a little younger growing up, I mean, I can say that truly I had my first legitimate paranormal experience this past year, actually, in May. But my interest definitely peaked in school with anything kind of creepy, spooky, mystery, with the R.L. Stine Goosebump books.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Like, come on, you got to go to the Scholastic Book Fair and get your Goosebumps book. And it's like, I feel like my interest in anything along that topic just kind of like escalated from there on out. Like The Conjuring's my comfort movie now at this point. So like, but that's where mine started. So, like I said, of course, when, the reality shows came on, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, whatever, I always enjoyed watching those shows and just thought it was really cool. And then just kind of took it from there, and, ran across my sinister sister and, was able to actually like tangibly do something with my interest and make something of it. So yeah, that's where mine started. Goosebumps.
Side note, not to get deterred from the conversation, I'm from Michigan, and we used to have these books called Michigan Chillers, and they also did like American Chillers, and they're around the same time as Goosebumps. Just, I know you guys are from a different state, but have you guys ever heard of those books or ever seen those?
I have not, but I would be interested. I like actually collect the old school vintage like Goosebump books originals. So I would love to
yeah, you should check into those. If you ever make it to Michigan, they supposedly have like a whole storefront that's like a tourist attraction, because the guy's from Michigan. So he started off with Michigan Chillers, and then he started making American Chillers, and they were like different states with different monsters, but they're super popular in Michigan. And it's like one of those weird things where I associate Goosebumps with those books, but it's like, unless you're from Michigan, like nobody's ever heard of it.
Yeah, nope, never heard of it, but I'll definitely look into that. That's really cool. Thanks.
And then another side note too, just to give another credit for something that's also fantastic. Paranormal movies, comfort movies, 1408. That's got to be mine. And I feel like that movie doesn't get enough recognition as a fantastic paranormal movie.
Yeah. I love that movie.
Yep, it's a great one. It's a good one.
It's just so original. Like, not very many storylines have something like that. And like the progression of just it not being the typical ghost, but just an evil area itself, which sparked a lot of interest for me into the paranormal, honestly, that like the whole idea between like, when you have these places that have these hauntings where they're the residual hauntings and stuff, like it kind of makes you wonder about that whole idea of it not necessarily being like a specific ghost, but rather like something with the area, and then it ends up trapping these spirits or different things in this area. And I know a lot of people get into like the portal concept nowadays, but I mean, it just...
Oh yeah, we have a whole theory behind that kind of stuff. So
We do.
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely have to get in that. I'm going to put that one on the side burner for a second, and we'll get into like Rachel's experiences and how she kind of got into the stuff, and then we'll double back into that one because I definitely want to hear your guys' opinion and theories on this one.
For sure.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
Yeah, so you were talking about earlier about how maybe you have experiences as a kid. Had a couple experiences as a kid that sort of really, I think, shaped my interest in the paranormal. I mean, it started when I think it was about 10 years old when my grandfather, he had passed away, and I was staying at my grandmother's house, and I came out in the morning and walked into the living room, and there stood what I thought was a person in the curtains. And, I ran to my grandmother all freaked out saying, Grandma, 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 there's somebody in the curtains. And she comes out and she goes, it's just Grandpa. She's like, Grandpa, go, you're scaring Rachel. And after that, it just like kind of disappeared and there was like nothing there. So that kind of, I think as like a 10-year-old, it kind of started to shape, like, I started to get into that point in time. I started to get to like all the horror movies and like, which my parents are probably like, what the hell? I had no idea you were watching those movies at like 10 years old. Come on.
It's just a phase.
Oh my
Hey, but the
God.
sooner you're able to separate
like
fact from
consumed.
fiction, the better, though. Because, like, a lot of people don't want their kids to see scary movies and stuff, but as soon as your kid can mentally separate that that's somebody in a mask, like, that's something good for them the rest of their life. So, I mean, once they can
Absolutely.
separate, like, this is done for a movie versus, like, this is real life, like, they can watch gory stuff if they just know it's, like, corn syrup, like... So it loses
Right.
that scary
It's just
touch
some
to it.
Chocolate. It's just some chocolate syrup, like in Psycho.
Exactly. It loses that touch. That's why you got to get into the paranormal horrors, because it's like they really get you going versus like the gory stuff. As soon as you know it's all fake, you kind of are like, oh, that's cool. You can see like they use this for that, and there's some rubber right there.
Some latex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was, for me, it was kind of Nightmare on Elm Street was like my delve into like the horror flicks. It's still like Freddy's ultimate, like for me, villain. But, and then like to go back to the paranormal, when I was a teenager, I was at a friend's house and her house like her parents were just describing to us that they had experiences in that house like for years, and they in fact thought that my friend was talking to like an imaginary friend for many years, because she would sit up in the room and she'd have all these conversations with what they thought was this imaginary friend. And then they started having experiences. Things started disappearing in the house. Like they knew they put something down somewhere and it ended up somewhere else, and nobody could figure out. Like,
If you're into the paranormal, you got to watch out for those imaginary friends, because those are just one of those weird things that kind of sits on the fringe of like, oh, it's fine. But if you're into the paranormal, it's like, there might be something weird there.
Not so fine.
Especially when people start looking into stuff like that and they realize that like somebody's passed away in the house at some point, and like their kid starts describing like this person wearing like a flannel shirt or something like that. Like it gets really, really weird real quick.
That is true. So as we were like listening to like her dad talk about these activity happening in the house, we were kind of all standing in like a semicircle, and I was towards the end, and there really wasn't anybody. There was nobody to the right of me. There was only somebody to the left. And all of a sudden, as they're like talking and telling the stories and stuff, I started to get like this tap, tap, tap on my shoulder, on my right shoulder. And I was like, what the heck is happening? So then after that, it was kind of like that really spiraled me, because I was about 15 at the time. And I was like, first I said, I got to get the heck out of here. The thing touched me. Like, I don't know. I asked my friend, I was like, did you touch me? And she was like, I'm on the other side of you. How am I touching you? And there's like, no way. So I was like, okay, I've got to go. But then after that, I just started going to like, with my husband and stuff, we went to like a Winchester Mystery House number of times. I had an experience in there. We went to like been to New Orleans, Salem, Charleston, Savannah. I've had like almost an experience at every location, just a little bit different of an experience, whether I capture something or I've had like direct where I've heard something say something to me in my ear. In Winchester, took us on like a behind the scenes tour. It was sort of like a tour that they were deciding whether they were going to put on like their normal tours. But so they came because we were kind of like in the VIP, we went enough times to the Winchester house that they invited us to do this tour. And I was like, yes, let's go. You know, I was so excited. And we went to this like room that was towards like one of the top highest peaks of the building. And we walked in there and everything was like roughly just framed. There was no sheetrock. There was no walls really. It was all just roughed out, kind of 2x4s and that kind of thing. And as soon as I got in there, everything started spinning. And I was like, I'm going to pass out. So I went over to my husband. I was like, I feel so dizzy. Like I'm going to pass out. And he was like, come stand out here and see if you feel any different. And as soon as I got out of the room, like it stopped. And so then I said, I got to stand outside the room and I got to know what this room is. Like, what is this? Like, and they said, well, they believed that this was her original seance room. And I was like, okay, that makes sense now. Like, because that was crazy. This crazy energy. Never felt like that before.
Dude, that house is a very strange thing because it's like there's so many different blended pieces of like evidence in there that it's like you don't necessarily know which direction to go with it because it's like obviously she was like a spiritualist, so she was obviously into all of this kind of stuff. But on the other side of it, it's like they completely tell you that like this house was intended to be for like all the spirits of everybody who had died from like Winchester guns and stuff. And then you start diving into it a little bit, and then you realize that the woman was actually just really into architecture, and she'd constantly be changing up this house. There was a few different fires, so they blocked off like a couple different areas and didn't completely finish it. So it's like there's still, of course, like the spiritual side of it, but on the other side of it, there's like part of the mystery on like why the house is shaped like that. They like, I'm sure in the tours and stuff like that, they probably still go with the story that like she was making all these spirit house, like set everything up for ghosts and everything like that. But, yeah, in the end, it was just because she was like honestly into architecture, but she honestly thought she was haunted by all the spirits of anybody that used the Winchester guns and stuff. But it's such like a weird house because it's like you want to hope that the entire thing is completely paranormal, but then on the other side of it, it's like which areas were just burned down areas and which ones were intended for something in the spiritual side of things.
Right. And I know that they spoke about that she really felt there was a curse on her family because, you know, her husband died really young. They lost their child. And that's why I think she really started like wanting to like talk to them, why she was so into like the spiritual movement, because she wanted to connect back with her family and you know,
she had like an infinite amount of money too in order to try to figure out how to do this too. So it's like, because you look into the money now and it's like people don't realize how much that would transfer to nowadays. Like this chick was like, I was hearing something that she could literally continue construction for over a couple 100 years and still not really make a dent onto the fortune that she'd made at the time. Like that's crazy.
Wow. That's insane.
She's the main heir after everything happened. She became the main heir to the Winchester.
Mm-hmm.
Was she the last heir? Do you know for by chance? Like, so after she passed, did it just go to like
I think she was. I think they had a board of directors, but she was the head. I guess they would have called her maybe a CEO or something like that back then. But yeah, she had headed the company after her husband died. So
I wonder if the curse transferred over to anybody or if it like split down or something. Like it was less intense because now it's like split between everybody on the board now.
You'll take this person and haunt them.
Instead of having thousands of ghosts on one person, you had a couple hundred on each. You'll be fine. And as you have more heirs, we had more CEOs. Like it's just going to keep splitting down. Eventually, everybody will just have one ghost on and we'll be good.
I know, because they're still in business, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
At least for now.
Yeah.
So then, after going to these places and stuff, I assume that at that point you weren't like fully like paranormal investigating, but rather just kind of like going to these places, checking it out, and just kind of getting into the experience and stuff.
Yeah, that was absolutely the case. It wasn't until I came out here to Tennessee that I actually found like a group, and that was sort of like happenstance because I met one of the other girls that was on the team and at like a brewery, and I don't know how we got to talking about it, but and we got to talk about like paranormal and stuff, and she's like, "Oh girl, I'm part of a team, like you should reach out and see if they need anyone." And I was like, "Are you serious?" And like, "Yeah, dead serious." And I was like, "I'm doing it now." It's probably like like a crazy person, but
So I guess kind of getting into more of your guys like paranormal investigating stuff. I mean, you guys, I'm sure you guys have had some experiences together, and you also have the couple of years before Jen had actually joined the team. But I want to get into your guys' theories of the paranormal, but I feel like before we can get into that, we have to kind of get into some of your guys' experiences on like why you kind of developed your theories and stuff. So I don't know if you guys have like a certain spot you want to start or personal favorite experiences, but I'd love to dive into some of your guys' personal experiences. We will be right back after this brief commercial break. But just a quick reminder, if you guys want to stay up to date on the show, you guys can always go and follow Inquiries of Our Reality and Open Minds Media on Instagram, Facebook, Discord, YouTube, and TikTok. Now feel free to fast forward through these commercials so we can hop right back into the show. And we are back, so let's get back to it.
Let's let Jen tell about one of her first experiences, like main experiences.
Yeah, that would be, that's probably my personal favorite because we actually recently went back there. So my first experience was in Franklin, Kentucky at the Old Stone Jail and Historical Museum.
Yeah. I think they just called it Historical Society, but
Historical Society. Yeah. And,
sounds more official.
Yeah. It's actually two separate buildings. The museum's on one side. Historical Society, is on one side, and the jail and the jailer's residence is on the opposite side of the road. Like literally, you cross the street, you're at one or the other. And the Historical Society is 2 stories. They think that it used to be an automotive. Used to make, I think it's gone.
Automobile parts.
Automobile parts
one of the
factory where they would manufacture. I'm not sure.
And then it became like garment factory. Like, it's had a lot of. It's had a number of like different businesses. Yeah,
it's been through it's been around forever though. And we are big believers in if there's not necessarily something paranormal affiliated with the building, definitely the land that the building stands on. And especially in this area, there is so much history, between the wars and, just Native Americans. Let's talk about all of the farmers and their century farms and how they inherited that property. And there's just so much stuff.
All the different minerals and stuff that are in the state too, if you kind of get into the other kind of side of the paranormal with it being kind of stuck in some of these minerals and types of stones and stuff. So
that's kind of our theory. Our theory is that a lot of these buildings, especially like the jail, Old Stone Jail, is built out of limestone. And limestone is known for, holding energy. And it just seems like now the historical building, I'm not sure about that, but definitely the jail I know is made out of limestone.
Just a weird side question off of that one too. I'm kind of curious, like say that they take limestone to build this specific building, but wherever the limestone came from, if there was something going on in that area, it makes you wonder if some of these hauntings might start just because of the material that they build some of these buildings out of.
Yeah. Like just transferred from one location to another.
Exactly. If you get into like the stone tape theory, you're literally, it's like moving like the magnet to another location. It's still going to have the same energy, the same thing that it's giving off, just in a new location now.
Exactly. Like I said, once you open up that door and you go down that rabbit hole, you can just keep going and going and going and going. The possibilities of what are just truly endless. But I had an experience at the historical building, and then I also had an experience at the jail. The historical building was more of like I don't know if you would say it wasn't like it was a sound. It was, wasn't like an EVP. It wasn't a voice or anything. It was an unexplained sound that we couldn't pinpoint from anywhere. It was like back in the day, when you open up those jewelry boxes, it has a little dancing ballerina and it like plays a tune. Mm-hmm. I heard that kind of music. coming just for a few seconds on the second floor of the historical building. And at first I thought I was hallucinating because I've never experienced anything like that in my life. And I was looking around and Rachel's like, oh my God, did you hear that? And I was like, oh my God, you heard it too. And then we had other investigators that were with us and they were like, oh my God, did you hear that? So we all heard it at the same time. And, you know, we all heard it from the same location, tried to find it, couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And then a little while later, we heard it again from the opposite end of the same building. And still just no explanation where the music was coming from.
Searched to see, could there be what? Because there's a lot of objects up there. There's a lot in the historical displays, and there's radios and that kind of thing. But none of them are plugged in. They're not working, and none of them could play that kind of like tinny tune that it. Yeah,
and we did have we had the spirit box going at the same time. And when it was time for us to leave that particular area and we couldn't figure out where it's coming from, I think Justin had the spirit box. And we were walking out of the room and we're walking down the stairs and I'm like, man, I just really wish we could have figured out where that sound was coming from, where that music was coming from. And in real time, the spirit box said the box. And we're like, what? Like, what box? You know? So
quit
that
messing with us.
I know that was even Justin was like, girl, you got a real time answer. It was crazy. And then we went, across the street to the jail and the jailer's residence. And that is the building that is built, it looks like an old, like
almost castle,
fortress, castle type jail. It's very, it can be very intimidating when you look at it. And they did that for a reason.
I was going to say it's probably purposeful. They want it to look like a fortification.
Yes. And
like you're going in and you ain't coming out.
And there is no coming out of that place. But yeah, I had a pretty intense experience in the jailer's residence. And I think I was in denial of that for a while. We were all in one of the rooms and people were asking questions to the spirit box and we were getting answers. And all of a sudden everybody starts hearing like a tap, 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 tap. And everyone's like, oh my God, do you hear that? And everyone's like, oh yeah. They're like, it sounds like it's coming from Jen. And they're like, Jen, do you hear that? And I'm like, yeah, it was like right behind me. I was sitting in front of a cabinet and it had glass shelves, but mind you, like not glass shelves, like a protective
glass
casing, glass cabinet, and it sounded like something was tapping the glass from inside the cabinet, answering, in time with the questions that were being asked to the spirit box. And I was just pretending like I didn't hear anything because I was completely freaked out.
I don't understand Morse code, Ghost. I'm sorry.
I was like, there's no way in hell this is happening right behind me. And then when they asked it again, they're like, Jen, oh my God. And it's tap, tap, tap. And I was like, they're like, do you hear that? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, I'm done. So I'm ready to go. But then I stepped outside and I got my composure together. And then it was just one of those okay, that really happened. Everybody heard it. There's no explanation for it. Now, why? Why? I want to learn more about the why. Who was it? What were they trying to do? Were they trying to get my attention?
They're just trying to tap, don't be scared. I am here.
Yes.
And then you start freaking out. They're like, don't be scared.
Probably, and here I am.
Tap, 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 stop. Tap, 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 stop.
I know, because I had never experienced anything like that before in my life. And it absolutely blew my mind. It was awesome that I wasn't the only one who heard it or experienced it, because it was justification that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't making things up in my head, and that it really did happen. So
yeah, we got a lot of activity in that room that day too. They think it was the room where children were at, and that's what it really felt like. Because we were, all of us except for Jen and maybe one other person, was sitting in chairs. The rest of us were sitting on the floor, kind of in a circle around the spirit box and the REM pod and that kind of thing. And we literally were feeling I felt like there were kids running around the room. It felt like there were energies running around the room, and one jumped and I could feel the floor vibrate behind me. Yeah. And Justin was next to me and he was like, "Did you feel that?" And I'm like, "Yes, I felt that. That was insane." Like, because you just don't, like, you're just sitting there and you don't expect like
anything
like this to happen, because it really felt like there were people running around the room. It was just like that intense.
Just out of curiosity,
at the same time as the tapping was going on too.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like all that happening at once.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot to take in.
just out of curiosity too, I've been to a couple of these like old prisons. Was this one of the ones where they used to have like the drop floor where they would like hang people in the building too? So it kind of has that creepy ambiance of like knowing that it has that drop floor.
Not at
this one didn't have
building. Not this prison. We did do an outside investigation at a courthouse here in Springfield, where they would do public hangings from the balcony. So I'd like to really learn more about that. But yeah, not at that particular prison. They didn't do that. Not that they told us anyway.
No, yeah. I think that it happened. Like, I think there was like a whole lynching and stuff that happened out of that building. But yeah. I think they went out and just found a freaking tree and.
The one I went to at one point was at Blackford County Jail, and they literally had this like, it was 2 stories, and then it would go into the attic, and they would bring people up into the attic, and they would drop them down the floor into this like main area. But it was weird because the main area was like, you'd go straight back and that's where all the jail cells start. And then you went to the right and then that's where the quarters were, where, like the, whoever's running the jail and stuff like that would live. So it's like, even living in that jail, like, I can't imagine how weird it would be to know that basically you walk out of like, quote, like your front door into like the jail area and just know that there has been people who have been killed right there. Like how can you live comfortably in your house knowing that? I mean, even living at a jail in general, like I know back in the day, like there's not really much of a choice because you weren't running these 24-hour shifts, having guards on duty. So somebody had to stay there. But I mean, just having like that weird feel of knowing that there's convicted criminals inside the building, and more than likely there has been death inside that building at some point, and assumably not from good means, because if it's in a jail, it's either 1, somebody trying to kill themselves, or 2, it's somebody else getting killed by another inmate. So no matter what, any death in that building is going to have a bad connotation. You don't have very many natural deaths at these types of prisons.
No.
Right.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
hold that thought. We'll be right back. But before we get into this commercial break, if anybody is interested in supporting the show or any of the work I do over here, you guys can go and check out the OMM Patreon. Over there is 7-day free trials available for all of the tiers, and it is constantly updating with new shows and different stuff going on. You guys can also go and check out the OMM merch store, constantly getting updated with new designs, not just pertaining to the podcast themselves, but also cryptid, paranormal, and extraterrestrial related designs. And the third way you guys can support the show, if you guys think I deserve it, is that you guys can leave a 5-star review or rating for the show on iTunes or Spotify. And if you guys leave a 5-star review, of course, I will read on the show and give you guys a big shout out. Now let's get to the commercial break so we can hop back in the show. And we are back. So let's hop right in.
And that jailer's residence, I know that at one point in time, that other room that they have like the Civil War, etchings that were done by the prisoners back there. Then that was at one point as they used as a cell before it became
a residence,
part of the residence too. So it was kind of like, well, that's just awkward. This room there were prisoners at, and now, okay, that's now part of my house.
Metaphorical. We're all trapped in here as inmates. I just get the bigger cell.
Exactly. Better get along real quick, too.
So, at least at this place, I know that, Jen, you said that you had some experiences there. Rachel, did you end up having any experiences there yourself?
Well, I mean, I had basically along the same lines as Jen experience is because I heard the music.
It was all just focused on Jen on that one, I guess.
It did. They're like, oh, new meat.
Yep, new meat.
New blood.
We got to scare her away so she never comes back.
She's like, we walked in this last time and we're like, we're back.
Yep. Remember us?
You couldn't scare us away. We're here again.
Yep.
And I'm sure we'll be there many more times since it's kind of like right in our backyard.
Yeah, pretty much.
So to speak. Yeah. But yeah, I had the experience with hearing the music, and then in that same room, in that children's bedroom, like having the floor and hearing the tapping, responding to us asking questions. If you're here, can you make a noise? Tap, tap, tap. It's like, oh, what?
Did you guys end up ever collecting any of the like historical backing to this building, as far as like if there had been any deaths or if any like notorious criminals stayed in this place or anything like that? Just of like any idea of like who might these spirits be in this building?
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely, there was a prisoner who is in one of the bottoms, was known as, I think, as the bottom cells, right? That caught on fire.
Caught on fire.
Yeah, and they caught on fire like in a way that they just don't know. It's like questionable, like how could this happen? Like
that's what they say. It was different times back then. People had different values, and they
could take justice in their own hands and be like, all right, you throw something in you're going up in flames, and you're essentially trapped in that cell. So,
because I was going to say, unless somebody's throwing like Molotov cocktails or something, I mean, if anybody hasn't seen a cell before, it's basically all metal and brick. Like, very hard thing to catch on fire unless you have an accelerant.
Exactly.
That's what they think, that there was some sort of accelerant that was like thrown on them, and then just throw a match in there.
Match or something.
Yeah.
And I mean, considering that it was Kentucky too, and knowing how there was like the racial division back in the day, because you said this place has been around since the Civil War, I'm assuming that there was probably a lot of like, we heard about this story that happened from this African-American gentleman that's now in this prison. And I'm sure that it was like a mass thing that like the town itself would come in and try to, burn the cell down, or like you said, bring them outside and try to lynch them themselves without actually having any type of like real justice served. Because, with those old towns and stuff like that, I mean, it doesn't matter where they are. Once people get an idea stuck in their head, like they're set on that idea and they're going to draw it out to the end. And especially back in those days when you have all of the racial division with people. And on top of that, it's like people don't have anything else to focus on. It's like, I'm angry about this. This is what I'm going to be angry about. And they just fixate. It's like the hauntings that are based around these places where these racial divisions are, just they always seem like they're way stronger than most other places, because there's the tension of that on top of the traumatic experiences of the deaths or whatever other grievances that happen in these areas. It just always seems way thicker.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so true.
Nail on the head. Yep.
And there was like, a lynching that happened, where people decide to take justice in their own hands, even before this person was given a fair trial. They essentially said, we don't think he's guilty. We're grabbing him out of this jail with a mob, and we're taking him up to this farm, and we're hanging him.
Some of that stuff's like the witch trials too, where it'll be like, they'll just be fixated on one person, and the whole town will team up just because they don't want that person around in that town anymore. So it's like the person may have been convicted without even have done anything wrong in the first place, or even have been anywhere near the crime. They may have just been looking for a reason because they didn't want this person in the town anymore.
Right. And that was similar stories when we went and investigated Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, and hearing everything that went down there, where there were a lot of innocents just put in jail just because, they didn't, they might have stolen something just to have food,
survive.
And some of them were younger children that they put in these prisons, and it was just like, insane, because you see the place and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge.
And nobody deserves to be there that doesn't deserve to be there. So
the whole idea of convicting children too is just a very different concept. Like now it's like you would never hear about, I mean, there's of course like juvie and stuff like that, but it's gone about like a totally different way. Just like the whole idea about like having children inside of like an adult prison is like almost like a foreign concept at this point in time, or like treating them in the same way. Cause at least with adults, it's like they want to do the whole, like, we're going to prep them to go back into society, but everybody knows from the jailing system that typically isn't what happens. As far as the kids go, it seems like that's where the focus is at, to actually try to turn them around, because I feel like they just give up at this point. If they're adults and they're committing these crimes, there's no help for them. It's like the kids, they actually try to make the effort now, where back in the day, it was like, you're convicted like an adult. Sorry, you're getting, you know, that's it. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're going the same place they go.
The same place they are. Yep.
Yeah, and some of them, like you said, there was that whole racial aspect, but also I think they did the same thing, incarcerated like Native Americans and just because they wanted the land, or they wanted the workers to help mine the mines that were up there.
Yeah, well, like Brushy, the prisoners actually worked the mines, and the prisoners actually built the prison. You know, I mean, it was free manual labor.
Yeah.
We can just call it like it is and call it slave labor, because that's essentially what it becomes.
Yeah.
It really was. And that they didn't care back then. They were like, great, we have access to, just do whatever we want with people.
And they would run them. The lady giving the tour at Brushy, wasn't she saying that they would work them so hard in the mines that people would pass out from exhaustion, and a lot of people were presumed dead that truly weren't dead. And so what they would do is, if they presumed that they were dead, they would pretty much bury them immediately to dispose of the body. And she's like, who knows how many people were buried alive because the proper steps weren't taken, to make sure that they were really not dead.
Do they get buried actually physically in the mine itself, or do they like get taken out and buried?
Somewhere on the property, I believe she said, right? Like within the property.
Yeah. Didn't they have like an area that was like a mass grave site?
Yeah.
So is this mine still like open, or do they have it like completely closed off where you can't actually go and investigate that anymore?
I don't think it's open anymore.
Yeah, because I think that maybe it's not.
I would assume that it's probably not safe. But if there was that much traumatic stuff that happened there, and especially considering what they may have been mining, like imagine how the hauntings might be inside those caverns at this point. Because if it was like limestone or quartz or something like that, like
coal. I think it was coal mines.
Coal. See, I don't know if there's actually residual stuff that attaches in coal, but I've heard a lot of horror stories from coal mines. So I mean, like,
yeah.
There's plenty of stories where they're like ghost lights and stuff within like coal mines.
The Tommy knockers, a little bit different than paranormal, because usually they're more like gnome-like. But then that's usually specifically coal mines that you hear the Tommy knocker stuff from.
Yeah, that's actually, I never heard of that. And I'd have to ask. So my family is from Madisonville, Kentucky, and all my uncles are old school coal miners. Like I never thought to sit down and maybe have a conversation with them.
Ask them about the Tommy knockers. Yeah, you might end up hearing some weird stories.
That'd be, no, I've actually got he actually gave me one of his old like coal mining lamps and coal mining lights and like all that. So I'll have to talk to him. That'd be interesting. Never thought about that.
Or even just some weird stuff that he's found. Because I mean, a lot of these people that a lot of the mines, sometimes they may have already been started at some point by like the natives, because the natives used to do a lot of mining and stuff. So it's like, you never know what they may have found even in there is like artifacts, like little old like trinkets, little arrowheads, like whatever. They might have found some pretty cool stuff down there.
Well, like even, I mean, like kind of segueing away from coal mines, even like the Bell Witch Cave up here in Adams, Tennessee, that's a real popular spot. There's actually a Native American burial ground like in the cave. So you just never know. You never know what you're going to find.
You guys might be the perfect people to talk to about this. So I'm fully familiar with the Bell Witch story. But one thing that I have never been able to quite make the full connection for is obviously the whole story is based around the family. It's based around the house, the cabin and stuff. But like, where does the whole the whole don't take a rock from the cave, like where does the cave fully like come into play in the story? Because I've heard so many different mixes of the story behind it that it has like its roots, but like I hear different versions on how the cave is associated.
Yeah. So supposedly the cave is where, Kate Batts was the supposed Bell Witch. And there's a bunch of theories behind, was she truly a witch? Was she just a person that, the Bell family took advantage of in regards to her property and her farmland? But supposedly when Kate Batts was banished, she went and lived in the cave, the Bell Witch Cave. And that was kind of her area, her grounds. People were to stay away from her home at that point. And that's where she, lived out her days and died. And, That's just kind of the theory that I've heard behind it. We haven't done an investigation in the Bell Witch Cave, but I've walked it. I did the tour. They put on a play every year. We're actually going this Friday to the Bell Witch play, and they do it on the ground where the old cabin and everything used to be.
So is the theory that the voice they were hearing in the cabin was like her who had already died or something in the cave at some point?
So the theory is that she was kind of haunting. She was still alive, but haunting the family while not being there. That she could kind of manifest her energy,
like an astral projection or something, almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And she would go after Betsy because Betsy was the family favorite, and things got pretty intense, pretty aggressive, and escalated. Up until John Bell died. But even then it was like the entire family was still kind of cursed after that.
Makes you wonder if the curse came from them doing something bad to her, because maybe if they were trying to take her land, and everybody knows the whole ergot thing, that if you had bad rye, you'd start kind of seeing some stuff, and then they just may have spun it, and maybe the curse started after they'd condemned this woman, And
by no means, I am not an expert. There are many people in this area who are. This is just kind of, my pieces of information that I've taken through what I have, done and seen and experienced. Because I literally live maybe 15 minutes away from the Bell Witch Cave. So we go there quite often. And it's a really interesting, I'm going to say, story. Because you don't know truly what happened and, what was the real situation. But
you ever tried to take a rock just out of curiosity?
No.
If I live that close, I might do it just for the sake of experimentation.
No.
But if I live like 6 hours away, which I do, then I'm probably not going to try it. But if I was like 10 minutes and I could be like, all right, let's see if it's all about. And then you could just easily just go back and return the rock. Like, why not? Let's try it.
Yeah.
Science.
When my parents were visiting from Phoenix, they wanted to go and do the tour. So we took them. And when I was in the gift shop, kind of looking around, the lady who, was working the register, she was on the phone with somebody, and I could hear her tell them, well, that's why we tell you guys not to take rocks. Okay, send it back. I'll give you our address. So she was on the phone with somebody who did the tour and stole the rocks. And I guess that they had a bout of bad luck and were calling her back to let her know what happened and to get the address of where they needed to send these rocks back. So, and she gets off the phone and she's like, they never listen.
Make sure you guys check your shoes, because everybody knows how little rocks get stuck in between your shoes. Like, what if you go home and you have that and then you lose it on the way somewhere and you're just like, how do I stop this bad luck? I don't have this rock. It's somewhere.
Yeah.
Inquiries of All Reality will be back after this brief commercial break. But just a quick reminder, don't forget to go and check out the awesome sponsors of the show: I Know Squatch, Cryptoteology, Snarly All Natural Products, Oregon-ite, Dimension Devices, and Big Ape Threads. More information and discounts for those are all available down in the show description. Now feel free to fast forward through these commercials so we can hop right back into the show. And we are back, so let's get back to it.
So, I mean, and then it's one of those things, is it real or are you manifesting it yourself? Like, because
it's the power of suggestion.
The power of suggestion. Yeah. So, but I got a kick out of that. She was like, I'm telling you, they never listen. They never listen.
I'm kind of determined, if I ever come down there and I stay in a hotel overnight, I'm just going to take a rock overnight. Just, I want to see if something happens. Like,
yeah. So it is interesting now. And then kind of once again, like, could we get into theory of what type of stone is down in the cave? Is there limestone down there? Is there quartz? Is there crystal? Yeah. Is there, you know what I mean? Like, but I will say it is creepy.
And there's water known to be in there.
Water.
So
there's a natural
water is a definite
spring. Yep.
Known to amplify energies.
Yep. But like I said, it's interesting. You don't know if it truly was a true haunting or if it was just a story made up because one family was trying to do an individual lady wrong. And there are still residents alive from both families, from the Bell family and from the Batts family. But you definitely hear more from the Bell family than you do about the Batts descendants.
I mean, like 100 years of just, that's the witch family.
Right.
people just throw those stories out. It's not till recently that people actually are like, all right, maybe that wasn't exactly how they said it was. But now it's too late because you don't have those first generation stories anymore.
No.
Now it's just become like folklore.
Yeah. Because it doesn't matter who's telling the story at this point. We'll never honestly know for sure. Because it's like, even if, this either family says this is the full true story, like, you're never going to know for sure because they've already heard it word of mouth, play telephone. And it's like, they're not getting that initial story firsthand anymore either. So it's just lost into time. They will never know for sure, unfortunately.
Right.
Until we invent a time machine, which maybe that'll happen one day. Then we'll know.
You never know.
We just got to go back and be like, all right, so Bell Witch, this is what happened. Then you go back and you're like, all right, so it was never Lizzie Borden in the first place. It was some other random guy. Like, go back to all these paranormal events and set it right.
Location
that
for
is
me.
a bucket list location.
Yeah, the Lizzie Borden house. I would love to go up there and investigate.
See, that house, I'm curious about that house too. If it might actually have been like another person, if it was actually her. Like, there's just so much like weirdness in the case that it's like, even though I've heard the case a million times, like, I'm not still fully convinced that it was Lizzie in the first place necessarily. Like, especially when you're like there's younger kid, there's like power of suggestion and stuff too. So it's just like, there's too much like weirdness with these stories. And it's essentially like a true crime tale. Like, most people kind of view it as more paranormal, but I kind of see it more as like true crime because I feel like it's just one of those unsolved mysteries that we'll never fully know. And even like the haunting itself, people claim that it's Lizzie in the house.
On the first 48,
Yeah. It's like, you'll never necessarily know which ghost is in the house either. Cause I mean,
true.
A ghost can say they can be whoever they say that they want to be. Like,
Yep.
Absolutely. That's what I did a whole blog for, the Spooky Sisterhood, which I'm a part of, but, we released different, blogs on our site, and I did a whole one because I'm so interested in the whole Lizzie Borden because I love true crime and I love like the paranormal, so it's like the merging of the two. And I was just like, it was just crazy. Like, some of the things that she said at the trial too was like crazy. Like, she was like, she had a different set of clothes on they saw her with in the morning, and then she had changed, and then they're like, what did you do with your clothes that you changed out? Oh, I burned them because I got paint on them. You burn them? Why the hell would you burn your
Wasn't
clothes?
there some other possible, like, wasn't there not necessarily like a love affair, but wasn't there some other like connection there where she was, I haven't heard this story in a long time. It was either she was getting molested by somebody or like there was a love interest or something involved too. So it's like, maybe she did it, maybe she didn't, maybe she was forced to do it. Like, it's still, there's so much weirdness to it. And even though like the craziness comes out in her, I mean, the time and era, I mean, people know that like the clothes were made with certain materials that would kind of drive people a little bit crazy and stuff. Like the whole like Mad Hatter concept came from like the mercury and everything in the hats and everything. So it's like, I feel like everybody had those bouts of insanity around that time, but it's like, was the bouts of insanity because of some traumatic event that happened to her? Was it because of a love experience that she was having, or was it literally just because of a lapsed moment of judgment? Like,
who knows?
Yeah, the other thing
too.
Mad
Hatter disease.
Yeah,
I
think so. Yeah, the other thing too was that with the axe that they found like the head of the axe down in the basement, and it was like, it clearly looked like it had been cleaned. And the handle was missing, and they couldn't find the handle anywhere. So it's kind of.
Didn't they claim that the handle got burned with the dress? Wasn't that like the theory behind it? Like she may have burned the handle and the dress?
In my research, I didn't come across, what had happened. They kind of just talked about when I read about the trial and stuff, and some of the things that she said that kind of didn't make sense to a lot of people. Those were what kind of were the takeaways from it, was that, she had lied about, her clothing or whatever. And then that the axe, them finding the axe without the handle. And, that there were rumors that, it was only like her and the maid were in the house. And it was kind of like, there were stories about that she and the maid were maybe in cahoots, and that maybe they were lesbians, and
See, I feel like there has to be
freaked out about that, and
There has to be more involved, because I don't know how like you'd get away with that much happening in one house without anybody like becoming aware of it before you get to go after the next person. Like, because they found one of the bodies upstairs, one in the basement. I don't think everybody's in the house at the same time, but still came in.
On the couch, like the dad was murdered on the couch and the mom was murdered upstairs in the bedroom where she was like making the bed or something that morning.
But I feel like there may have been two people involved on the side of taking these people out.
Because the interesting thing they asked the maid too was like, okay, you thought you heard some noise upstairs, but you didn't go to check it out. You just kind of went about your...
She froze for a minute. There it goes.
Oh, did I?
We lost you, Rachel.
Okay. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. That was the longest one. The other ones were about 2
Yeah.
seconds. That one was like 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's trying to tell me it says that my internet's unstable right now. Like Lizzie Borden, no. A little unstable. But the maid said, I thought it was Lizzie. And she's like, because I heard a little like noise, but then I heard a laughing. And they were kind of like, well, how come you just didn't go check out what was going on? You just kind of went, oh, well, and I'm just going to go about finish doing my duties for the day around the house.
Talk about weird that all these old crimes, it's all like word of mouth for the most part. Like, it must have been so easy to get away with crimes back in the day, because it was you have three people in the house, one person gets murdered, the other two people are aware of it and are in on it, and that other person's never getting convicted. All of a sudden it's going to turn into, oh, this person came after us, everybody believes it, boom, that's the end of it. Like, so easy to get away with these crimes back in the day. That's why we have so many of these unsolved crimes, and even like the forensics aspect of it too, because people didn't have that connection with like fingerprints, all of this kind of stuff yet. Yeah. So it's like even the Black Dahlia murder, for example, like all the news reporters had their fingers all over everything. So it's like any evidence that they would have had completely tampered because they didn't understand at the time, and everybody was just like, oh, let's get the story. Yeah. Same thing with Lizzie Borden. I guarantee you there was so much evidence that got tampered with on accident. Like,
yeah, even if you go back to like the Amityville story and the son who apparently went and killed, his brothers and sisters and mom and dad and everything, and he later said like, it was my other sister was in on it and another friend, and they could never prove anything, and they never had, even in the I think it was 70s, right, or like late 60s, early 70s, they didn't have the technology we have, so they put him away, but was he innocent or not?
Kind of weird to think about too, how much we've advanced just from that time. It makes you wonder how like primitive our means of researching this stuff is going to be now, like 30 years in the future. Like, they're going to be looking at us like, you're just messing up the evidence, you're ruining it, we're never going to be able to figure this out now.
Yeah.
So true.
Very true.
Yeah.
Hold tight, guys. This is the last break, so stay tuned. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
But I guess kind of starting to wrap up towards the end, I always like doing words of wisdom from the guest to the listener. And if both you guys want to go, just one of you guys want to go, totally up to you. But if there's any words of wisdom you might want to bestow on the listeners or other investigators out there or inspiring investigators, what might it be?
I've got some, maybe some good like tips that we try to tell like the people that come on investigations with us. A lot of times that we'll tell them that, we want to walk into a location with like good intentions and respect, because if we're assuming, which we for the most part are assuming, that might be haunted with, human spirits, that they were once people too. So it's kind of like walk in there. We we always introduce ourselves. We always tell them, hey, this is what we're here to do. We're just here to have a conversation with you, like learn about you. If you guys want to tell your story to us, we're here to listen. And we always try to just like do things to protect our energies too. And if we feel off for any reason, like in a particular spot, it's okay to say, I need to get out of this space because I just don't feel right.
Right.
So we do that. And then the end of the investigation, every investigation, we also kind of we tell the spirits like that are there, we thank them for talking to us and say, you have to stay here. You cannot follow us home. This is your home. We're going to go to our home. We'll come back and visit you another time. And thank you for sharing your story. And, you know, and then once we leave the building, we're like, Sage, you know?
Make sure there's no items accidentally in anybody's pockets. Like nobody has any papers or anything, right?
Check your shoes for rocks, you know.
Just a quick thing too.
Jen?
You made a comment about the like people, these things being like people at some point. One thing that I've always thought was really, really cool. This was somebody I had on the show a long time ago who lives up in Canada. He goes and he checks out all of these old like ghost towns and everything. And he started bringing in this facet into his investigations where, say if he knows this place was all like French people, he assumes that they're not going to speak English. So he would bring somebody that would speak French. And when he would try to do like, you know, the spirit box and stuff, he would have that person speak French. And then all of a sudden you would notice that he would start getting these responses back and they'd be in different languages in French and stuff. So just bringing that real world facet too. Like if you're going to investigating a place and you know that like the people that were here spoke a different language, if you have the ability to do it, bring somebody that speaks that language and you'd be surprised how much more connections you might actually be able to make with those people. Because half the time it's like you're trying to make that connection to make them feel comfortable in order to communicate with you. And half of that might be, again, just simply speaking the same language as them. Because if you're going into a place and they all speak French and you're yelling at them like in English, like they don't know what you're saying to them. You could be yelling at them. You could be saying something nice. Like they have no idea. Try to speak their language. Yep.
We did have at the Lynchburg funeral home, it was interesting. We were doing like a spirit box session. It was with like a geophone. And all of a sudden what started coming through was like Hispanic. And there just happened to be a Hispanic guy that was an investigator. And he started speaking Spanish to and asking questions, and he was getting responses in Spanish. He was like the only one there. We were like, what's he saying? What's he saying? You know, we were like tripping out because it was just crazy. We never had an experience where all of a sudden it's just speaking Spanish.
That brings some like really good solid validity to the situation though, because it's like a lot of people like to say spirit boxes are just generating random words. But if your spirit box is set to English or you have English as the normal input, everywhere you go it's speaking English, and then you go to this place, there supposedly was somebody who was Spanish who died, and all of a sudden your spirit box is yelling at you in Spanish. That brings some solid validity to the topic here. I mean, like that's some solid proof as far as I feel like we're going to get for the paranormal that there was something that happens there. Because how else would you explain that? Like, it's not just going to randomly know, like, oh yeah, I'm going to start spitting Spanish words at you now. Like,
Yep, exactly. That gives me an idea if we go down to New Orleans and go in the French Quarter.
The French Quarter.
Bring somebody French and see if you get some or Creole, something like that.
I was going to say even
like
Creole, it's English, but it's like a very distinct, hard to understand English. So if you got somebody that can speak some straight up Creole, I mean, might make it a lot easier to understand even on the other side of the spirit box, because sometimes it's hard to understand stuff in solid English. So if they're speaking Creole, it's just going to sound like mush mouth to you unless you fully understand it and you grew up in that language.
Yeah. I think there's one other time I was doing like an Estes method someplace, and it's what it sounded like. Oh, maybe it was down in Springfield when we were in that alley.
Oh, jail alley.
Alley. Remember betting like what sounded like foreign, like you could tell it was somebody speaking something, but you're like, I have no idea what they're saying.
Yeah.
It sounded quite foreign to us, but
I mean, especially places like if you went to like New Orleans, I mean, obviously they speak French and stuff, but I mean, you also got to remember too that if it's like a trade route, there could be a mix of a bunch of other languages in there too.
Because the Spanish were there before the French came in.
And even native language too. I mean, going back even farther than that, even when these were trading posts, you still had natives coming through and, you know, selling furs or whatever else they were doing too. So, I mean, like all these trading posts, it's like, you don't necessarily know. I mean, you could go there and investigate and all of a sudden you get some language, you're just like, what is this? And later out you figure out it's like Austrian, and there was like Austrian traders that were coming through or something, you know, like
it's crazy.
But I don't know if you had any words of wisdom that you'd like to share, Jen. I didn't mean to cut you off there midway through or anything, or if you had anything to add on to what Rachel was saying. So
Rachel Rachel nailed it. That's just kind of how we like to do things. And, you know, we always tell everybody as well, I mean, you don't need a lot of fancy equipment. Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. But I mean, just trust your gut. Like your natural instinct, your natural intuition, you know, is one of your best tools. So just trust your gut.
Trust that.
Yeah.
Then we had an investigator that happened when we went to South Pittsburgh Hospital.
Mhm.
And, you know, there was something that happened to her on the third floor. And she was like, we were like, are you good or do you need to leave? And she was like, you know, feeling really emotional. And she was like, this is not me. This is not coming from me. Like, I don't understand. Like all of a sudden, oh, fine. Now I'm crying and we're like on the verge of it. And she was like, we're like, do you need to go? And she was like, yes, I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, let's go.
Oh.
We didn't like leave the building completely. We left that floor and went investigated down on the other floors. But, you know, you don't know the reason why. And we'd rather not take chances.
She was fine after we moved.
Yeah.
So.
Just certain people are more sensitive to certain energies than others too sometimes. And I feel like sometimes if, say a being or an entity or whatever has like a certain focus on a particular person for whatever reason too, it's like other people in the room may not understand, but it might be individually focused on one specific person that's having those bad, ominous feelings and stuff. So yeah, you really, really got to trust your gut with this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And even on the other side, I always got to throw this disclaimer out. If you're a paranormal investigator, make sure you guys have permission to go where you're going to go. Because a lot of people try to sneak into places, and all you got to simply do is ask permission. And I've even thrown this one out to people that try to go to like graveyards and stuff. Like if you go to your local police station and you say, I would like to do a paranormal investigation at this cemetery, I would like just permission to be there. Like you'd be surprised. Like the local police may even say like, you know, if you're going to be respectful, you're fine. Go ahead. We're not going to bother you. As long as we know what you're doing, you're not sneaking through a cemetery in the middle of the night. You know, you have our permission. Just take that extra step and just make sure that if anybody's out there paranormal investigating or just starting up, do it the safe way, do it the correct way, and don't end up getting yourself arrested by being somewhere you're not supposed to be.
That's smart. Yeah. Come on investigation with us. We'll be happy to like get you into these locations and investigate with us.
Yeah.
And perfect timing, actually. If anybody wanted to possibly come out on an investigation with you guys, they want to follow your work, they want to maybe get involved with your team, where can people come and find you on the internet, and where can people come and find means of contact, or for even if they had a place they want to investigate? I don't know if you guys do that kind of stuff, but just throw it out there.
Yeah. So we're on Facebook, Sinister Sisters Paranormal, same on Instagram. And then we have our own website that's sinistersistersparanormal.com. And Gmail, sinistersistparanormal at gmail.com. You can reach us on any one of those.
Well, I appreciate you guys making the time to come on the show today. And you guys will have to keep me posted on any further stuff you guys got. You guys are always welcome to come back on the show. And hopefully I'll have you back on at some point. And you guys can share some more experiences and stuff that you guys are, or any other projects you guys might be working on in the future.
We would absolutely love to do that.
And if you guys ever get into like doing tours for anybody or any of that kind of stuff, or you guys are trying to advertise something, come on the show and we'll talk about it and we'll, you know, get it all set up for you guys.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we've got some upcoming events too.
Oh, even better yet. Yeah. Let everybody know about your upcoming events.
So we're actually celebrating the Day of the Dead. And we've teamed up with the old Raleigh Cemetery in Memphis. And we'll be doing a barbecue campout and investigation of the cemetery. So that's going to happen on November 2nd. So we still have a few tickets available for that if you wanted to go. And then in December, I believe it's going to be December 7th. I'd have to probably think that sounds right because I was like trying to look at the calendar. But the 7th. We're partnering with Tennessee Paranormal. They're the ones who run the Lynchburg Funeral Home and the Lynchburg Jail. And we're going to do a Krampus event there for the holidays, and also it's going to involve charity. What we want to do is give back to something that's kind of near and dear to a lot of our hearts because of the military. And Jen, you can just say a little bit about the charity that we're working collabing with. Yeah,
it's going to be it's called Operation Stand Down. And they're based here in Nashville, Tennessee. And they work with veterans from all branches who need help. They help them find employment. They help them find housing. They help them if they're needing some financial assistance with bills or groceries and whatnot. They just help our veterans get back up on their feet and get headed in the right direction.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys got involved with them. That's definitely a great cause. And I'll make sure that I include, if you guys send me an additional link to both of those events, I'll make sure I include them down in the show description so everybody can find them quick and easy, because I definitely want to make sure people have access to be able to find that and help out if they can.
Yeah.
We so appreciate that. Yeah.
Definitely. And like I said, if you guys ever have some more stuff you guys want to come on and talk about, you guys are always welcome on the show. And I appreciate you guys making the time to come on today.
Yeah, thanks for having
Shayn.
us.
We appreciate it so much.
If you guys enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave those reviews or ratings on iTunes or Spotify. Your opinions go a long way, and I really, really appreciate it. And if anybody would like to get a hold of me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys can get a hold of me through social media, Instagram or Facebook, but Instagram is the one that I'm most active on. Or you guys can go to the submission form, which is available on the link tree. There are two options there, one of which is to contact me, and the other one is to report an encounter. So on the other side, if anybody would like to report an encounter, again, don't forget to do that and report those to ommencounterreports@outlook.com, or you guys can use the hotline number, which is 313-364-1551. And every single thing that I mentioned throughout the show is all available on the link tree. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. I hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.